remember seeing the first puck drop. Those emotions when a player scores. The cheers from the fans and the feeling when your favorite player shoots and scores. Your hockey heroes laced up their skates, taped up their sticks, and hit the ice. Remember the passion they played with, the passion you felt with every game, win or lose. Now, you can rekindle those memories with hockey players of the past. Get insights on how they felt on and off the ice. Hear interviews from coaches, referees, and thoughts from their fans. This is the Old Time Hockey UK podcast with your host, Ken Abbott.
Hi guys, this is episode 2 of the Old Time Hockey UK podcast. I'm your host Ken Abbott, and today's guest is former Great Britain and Nottingham Panthers forward Marc Twaite. During his career, Marc also played for the MK Kings, Coventry Blaze, Cardiff Devils and Sheffield Steelers, before injury cut short his career at just 27 years old. We'll be talking to Marc shortly. Just before that, I'd like to introduce you to our sponsor. Crazy Kenny's Hockey Shop is your one-stop hockey shop for hockey equipment and NHL merchandise. Right prices, right service, every time. Please visit www.crazykennys.com. That's www.crazykennys.com. And now, let's get straight on with the interview. Hi Marc, welcome to the Old Time Hockey UK podcast.
Hi Ken, how are we doing?
I'm okay mate, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Is it true that you got your nickname of Smurf because you look like one of the characters in the 1981 TV series?
Yeah, very good question. What it was when I was a young, I think I was 5 when I started skating, but it was 7 when I actually started playing for the Tiger Cubs, which was like the under-10s back then. And what it was, the Smurfs was very popular back then. My parents, being quite hard up at the time, couldn't afford brand new equipment, which was probably near enough £300 for a full setup with skates and everything. So I had second-hand equipment, which was from a guy from the Ashfield Islanders back in the day, which was blue and white. So, of course, you've got the Nottingham juniors all in black, white and gold, and there's me in blue and white. And, of course, you know, with the Smurfs being on TV, I had stickers put on my helmet and I had the badges stitched onto my shorts and this, that and the other. But we had Jimmy Keys, Panthers legend, and Fred Perlini, also a Panthers legend. They was coaching us at the time. And they come up to me and patted me on the head and they started calling me Strumpf. And I didn't have a clue because I was a young kid then. I didn't have a clue what they was talking about. But apparently it's Smurf in German because it was the Smurfs was very, very popular in Germany apparently. That's basically where it came from, and the name Smurf stuck ever since. So there we are.
Oh, nice one. I didn't realise it was those guys that gave you the name.
I still get called Smurf. I don't answer to Mark, I just answer to Smurf.
Let's talk about your early career then. What are your earliest memories of playing hockey?
I've got to say that the travelling to such as Durham and Whitley Bay and the Scotland weekends we had a tournament up in Scotland every summer. Also, the tournaments we had, Baden-Baden came over Rosenheim at the old Nottingham Ice Stadium.
Was this your the very early, before you actually became a Panther, or?
Oh God, yeah, this was like between the age of say 12 and 14.
Right.
The Tigers, we travelled so far for such tournaments, Baden-Baden, Rosenheim, and it was every Christmas near enough as well for at least 2 weeks. So back then it was, you'd have a full team of players, or kids should I say, and the parents on a coach, 24-hour bus ride for a tournament, take part in the tournament, which we got billeted out by the local players' parents. And we did very well as Nottingham Junior. Then you had the tournament up in Fife, in Kirkcaldy, which we won the 1 year. I remember scoring the winning goal there in the penalty shootout to win that one. But yeah, that was the early days, and I would say the old ice stadium. There's so much character there, and that was my early memories of ice hockey back in it all started really.
Let's move on to the Panthers. Tell me about the first time you stepped onto the ice as a Panthers player.
Well, Damps was the coach. It was on a Tuesday night and a Thursday night. It was 10:30 till midnight. And I got to train with them for about probably 8 months before I actually got called up. So there was a few of us. It was myself, Ashley Tate, Matthew Trickett, Danny Thompson, Mark Roberts, Matt Bradbury, bless him, passed away now, Gary Rippingale. There were several of us that got called up just to train, to train at that standard before we actually played the first game. The first game, I remember Damps It was very clever how he fitted the young kids in. He put us individually, spread us around the room next to a very influential older player of the Panthers, and I got sat next to Davy Graham, which was very good because Davy he looked after the British lads. A lot of them did back then. Nigel Rhodes and that, they always took us under their wings kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
But the first time you skate out, with your Panthers jersey on in front of, say, 2,500 fans at least in the old building.
I remember it well. I was in Block 1 at that time.
Yeah, it was a special moment, mate. You got goosebumps. I mean, even back then, you could skate around warm up with no helmet on. I mean, they wouldn't allow it now, but back then you was allowed. And at the age of 15, it was my first chance to play with the Panthers. That was thanks to Damps for that. But yeah, it was the time I'll never forget, and that was in 1990/91 season. So yeah, great times. That's where it all started again from the Panthers.
Before a game, did you have any superstitions or rituals?
It's always been funny that, because my superstitions is obviously to get there early, to do a lot of things, as in stretching, warming up, and drinking my waters and my Lucozades back then it was, along with dressing, like basically tying on my skates and putting my socks on my right side. It was always my right side first, so my superstition was right side first. But there was many little things that I did in the dressing room regarding my stick. I would always tape 2 sticks. I would never just tape one. And do the butt ends as well as the blade. And it was just several different things I used to do mentally and prepare. Certain music, AC/DC. And pretty much from the age of, like, say, 15, like I said, and 16, it carried on all the way through my career. I stuck with it. It wasn't until I got a little bit older, probably around 17, 18, where I really got involved with, a superstition master called Paul Adey, and I followed in his footsteps, really.
Right.
As in the fitness side of things, gym and pre-game warm-up, and the actual diet side of things, as in, what you should be eating the night before a game, such as a Friday night, and what you should be eating the morning and the day of a game.
So no Friday night fry-ups then?
No. I mean, don't get me wrong. Back then, it was a little bit more relaxed. The boys used to go out and have a couple of pints. It didn't hurt anybody because it wasn't that serious, even though it was, I suppose. But you could get away with it, and it's, as long as you didn't go too crazy, it was fine. But no, I was very, very much follow the footsteps of such as Paul Adey back then. Kind of stuck with me from an early age, and I think that was probably the best thing that led me through my career. Really, is to get all the foundations correct, from such an age, to carry me through my career, which was our class is fairly successful. So yeah, happy days.
Obviously, you played a number of seasons. How many seasons did you play with the Panthers?
It was 8 seasons in total.
What was the atmosphere like in the locker room prior to the game?
Because it was such a, the old arena the dressing rooms was in the corridor, so 24/7 you've got screaming fans shouting, chanting the Panthers and God knows what. And next door, like literally just 50 yards down, was the away dressing room. So you had the away fans also chanting, Racers or the Wasps or whatever it was back then. So you had that all outside the dressing room, and that carried through to the players big time. You heard everything. So even if you heard one of the, such as Barry Burt swearing in the background, you could hear it clearly. It was one of them where everything stood out. And as soon as you walked out that dressing room, the fans were screaming and shouting. You go up the tunnel, up the steps, up onto the ice, and it was a special place, the Nottingham Stadium. It really was. But the atmosphere, because the fans was right on top of you, it was electric. Like I said, you heard every word. Sometimes it was criticism. If you've had a bad game, the fans would let you know.
Yeah.
And I think that helped us. Because now they don't get that. The fans, the players walk off into the tunnel. They probably get the odd boo if they've had a bad period or whatever. But we actually had the fans was in your face.
Memories, insights, and anecdotes of hockey heroes. The Old Time Hockey UK podcast.
Panthers-Steelers games have always been so intense for the fans. Did the players feel the same intense rivalry?
100%. Yeah, there was no feeling like just the whole week. It was from, back in the day when Blazer was head coach, it was drilled into you from the Monday. It was the Tuesday, it was the Wednesday, it was all the way through the week.
Right.
You've just got that big game on your mind. And it was obviously for the team, but it was for the fans more than anything. We knew how special that was. And the fan, it was going to be electric in the arenas, whether it was at Sheffield or Nottingham. It was always a sellout crowd. They were special games, the old butterflies standing on the blue line, waiting for the whistle, the puck to drop. Yes, certainly, times you never forget. And just, you knew there was going to be fights. You knew you was going to be in a game and in a war. And that's what made hockey special back in the day. It's a shame that it's not like that anymore. Back when I was playing for the Panthers, and the Steelers rivalry was very special.
Take me back to a Panthers-Steelers game. It's minutes before you go out onto the ice. What would be happening in the locker room?
There'll be a lot of rituals between players. There'll be a lot of tapping pads and little words in ears and stuff, like little whispering and kind of, way to go, buddy, get the first hit in there or whatever it may be. But there was some guys just like to stay very quiet. And such as Trevor Robbins, you could never talk to him before the game. He would just sit there in the corner. Even if you did talk to him, he wouldn't even acknowledge you. So you just stayed well clear of Trevor Robbins.
Right.
But he was so focused and in the game, and that's how certain players was. You just couldn't upset their kind of pre-game ritual, as what they say. Mine was just to make sure I got plenty of fluids down me. Sometimes, such as Garth Premack and the captains back then would put on certain CDs, so it'll just fire the players up. Blazer will come in and say a few words. But mainly, like I said, it was all leading up. The whole week was leading up to that. The first few minutes, before going on the ice, you've got a real sweat on, the heart rate gets up, and it's a great feeling, because you're going to war, and them old rivalries was special.
What was the funniest fan remark that you can remember when you was on the ice?
I think the worst fans was Fife for that.
Yeah.
Fife and Whitley Bay. I mean, the Nottingham fans was always also very jovial. Now, if you had a bad period, they still try and G you on. I think the worst abuse I ever heard was like Twaite, you twat. And that was up in Fife because of the Scottish accent. That's probably because I hit one of their imports and he fell over.
Didn't like that.
Whatever it might have been, you've had a good period and you're up 4-1 in Fife, which was, back then was very good. Yeah, and in Whitley Bay also, you'd get cold coffee thrown at you. You'd get, chips thrown at you. It was even places like Solihull, you'd walk off through Solihull through the netting in the corner, and you'd got the fans dragging you through the netting, just grabbing your shirt, trying to get hold of you.
Wow.
Same in Peterborough, in the Pirates Animal Corner or whatever they called it. And it was quite intimidating for the players to skate off to the away fans sometimes. But that's how it was back then. And I tell you what, you had to be mentally prepared as well as physically in other ways. But that's what makes British ice hockey special.
Who would you say during that time was the crazy guy in the locker room?
Oh, God, we had so many crazy characters individually that had rituals of before and after. Someone like Dan Dorian was one where, if Dan Dorian scored a hat-trick, which was quite often because he was a hell of a player,
yeah,
he just laid as soon as he come into the dressing room, he'd strip off. He'd lay there naked on his back in the shape of a starfish. And the young guys, would come and squirt a talcum powder down his throat, basically. Beer on him and throw things at him, tape and everything. He loved it. And that was like a crazy thing to do back then. You never see that happen now. There was many certain things what guys used to do.
Would it be the same sort of thing in practice? Would you have the same crazy guy in practice, or would it be different from a game? Or
yeah, some guys were just characters. I mean, Hunty, my old wingman, he was a character, and some of the imports would probably say that we was characters, but, we was always playing pranks, you're always doing something crazy. Sometimes, because we had to wear a shirt and a tie to home games, and we'd go in there, me and Hunty and some of the younger guys, we'd just play pranks on some of the imports just to get the team morale going. And you'd just cut the tie in half, or you'd cut the toes off the socks, or you glue the laces together on the shoes, and little pranks like that. It was great, little stupid things like that. It just boosts the morale, and all of a sudden, once these pranks start going around the restaurant, they're trying to get you back. I remember Hunty we had a bag skate because we lost 2 games away in Scotland, and Blazer, straight after, normally, on a Sunday in the morning, you go straight home to your bed, but Blazer, one weekend, he made us put the kit back on at 6 in the morning at the old ice rink, and it was wet through. You can imagine 2 days in Scotland. It was absolutely wet through. It was freezing cold. And he gave us a 45-minute bag skate straight after a game, pretty much. We'd been on a 7-hour bus ride. And Hunty put some shampoo in my water bottle. You can imagine we had a 45-minute bag skate after a game. We'd hardly slept on the coach. I go to grab my water bottle. I didn't even taste it. I just put it straight on my neck, and it was shampoo. Of course, I was sick as a dog for that hour. So that was about. We got away with it. It was part of the team then. That's what we did, and that's what boosted the morale. And it was good fun,
Sure, yeah. Who would you say was the biggest influence on your career?
Definitely Paul Adey.
Yeah.
Obviously, my coaches back then, which was Damps, and then Damps for getting me into the Panthers, and then Blazer was a hell of an influence. Just the way they was, the way they not the way just the way they coached, the way they handled the players personally as men, and the way there was kind of come across as your best friend as well as your mentor, if you know what I mean. You could quite easily go and have a beer with Damps and Blazer during the week. You'd class him as a friend and a coach. But obviously Paul Adey, with the way Paul got me into the gym, got me diet sorted, very strict routine. I've got to say Paul Adey on that.
Is there a player you would like to hear on the show? Tell Ken now at oldtimehockeyuk.com or Facebook /oldtimehockeyuk.
Is there any player you wish you could have played with?
I would say, but to be fair, the players that I wish I could have played with, I actually ended up playing with, like such as Stephen Cooper. I played with him in Coventry. Players like even, opposition players, imports that I respected, which was like Doug McEwen and Steve Moria. Played with Doug McEwen in Peterborough for a couple of games, and I played with Steve Moria when he come to Nottingham for that short spell when we had an injury there for playoffs. There was Tony Ann, you've got to say. Tony Ann was one that I never got to play with, but even in the GB side, which was a shame because Tony was always kind of the top Brit back then. And, we all looked up to Tony. He was a hell of a player. But players like, my age group, I respected. I mean, it was back then, every British player respected every British player. Your Nicky Chin, your David Longstaff, your Anthony Payne, your Johnsons. I ended up playing with Shuggy Johnson in Coventry. I ended up playing with Tasker in Coventry. These guys I grew up with and played against when they was at Durham, because Durham and Nottingham was a brilliant junior setup. I ended up playing with them either with GB seniors or at Coventry or in Milton Keynes or wherever it was. So it was, or Cardiff even. Yeah, it was kind of through my career I did manage to get to skate alongside a lot of them and spend a bit of time with them in the dressing room. But as in one person that probably, like I said, I didn't get to skate with in a team was Tony Ann, and that was probably the only one I can highlight.
You mentioned all these bricks. Of course, there was a lot more quality bricks in those days because there were just 3 imports and a reclass.
Yeah, 3 imports and a dual national. So you had at least on every roster was 14 to 15 British players. So you had basically 3 lines of British players.
Yeah.
And your fourth line, and back then the roster was 23 players. Not saying that every time you got played, but even if you had 1 shift a game, or you'd wait 3 games before you played 2 shifts, but you had to make sure that you was prepared and ready to play them 2 shifts, and you took your chance when you got it. I mean, that's how it was back then, but kind of damp throwing you in at the deep end sometimes, the same with Blazer, but you sank or you swam, and that was the way you kind of progressed back then. But yeah, I mean, every team back then in the Heineken days, they had quality British players, and many of them. There wasn't just 1 or 2, you had 7 quality British players, and that's what made it so special. Because you had Brits fighting Brits, you had a full Brit line going against a full Brit line, maybe 1 import on the ice, that was all. And at the end of the day, back then, that's what brought the fans in, I felt.
I think you're absolutely right.
The fans wanted to see bump and grind, crash and bang, and the odd fight every shift.
Yeah, I remember at the ice stadium when the 4th line used to come on, the kid line, there was a buzz that went round the stadium because it was our own going on the ice to do battle.
That's it, yeah, because a lot of the fans back then had watched them all the way through the juniors, then you get to the seniors, and it's like they followed your career from such the age of 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's how the clubs was back then. The clubs now, the fans now, no disrespect to the new fans, but they just don't know. They don't, none of the new fans now very rarely go to watch the juniors, the 10s, the 14s, the 16s, the Lions, for example, at Nottingham, before they watch and progress into the Panthers, but they don't get the chance anyway now. I think the last British player called up that plays regular is Lacko. That's 5 years ago. So it's a shame, really, because at the end of the day, you can't survive without British players.
Well, you're absolutely right. The British players are, or should be, the future of the game.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what brings crowds in as well. People don't realise, no disrespect to an import, a second-class import, as I call him, which is just here to kind of fill the roster.
Yeah.
He hasn't got a school or a family or friends from a school or whatever, or like such as Beeston or whatever, where they used to come and watch that player, like such as British players have, because they're from the local community. And local community, it puts bums on seats. It also brings local sponsorship in and everything else. And that's all kind of gone away from the game, which is missing big time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. So talking of, obviously, of your career, you left for the Milton Keynes Kings in season 98-99. How did it feel to leave the Panthers?
It was horrible. When you come through your juniors and you play for the Panthers, and you play there for 2 or 3 years, at that age, you never think you're going to leave. You think you're there for life. That's your home club. You don't think you're going to leave, but you do eventually. I didn't want to leave Nottingham. It was, I had 2 good years in the Super League. Okay, I didn't play a lot. I was basically, there was the last year in the Super League for me, I think there was 9 British players in Nottingham. Then I ended up going to Sheffield in the Super League, and Blazer took me there. There was only 6 of us, British players in the whole league out of 190. So
wow.
I ended up going to Milton Keynes, and ironically, the guy who I sat next to in the dressing room at Panthers was Davy Graham, assistant coach, and it was Davy that took me to Milton Keynes, basically.
Right.
He wanted me to be a part of their squad down there, and Milton Keynes was just starting up again after their break, so it was kind of a new team, and Everything was new going on in Milton Keynes. There was no football or cricket there to compete with. So ice hockey was big. I had 2 fantastic years in Milton Keynes, and the fans was tremendous, just like the Nottingham fans was.
Then after that you moved to Coventry, which I think is where I caught up with you because Crazy Kenny's sponsored you for that season.
That's correct, yeah. Coventry, again, it was like, do I leave Milton Keynes? Am I happy here? It was basically torn between, obviously, the money side of things, because I said to myself, I said to my parents, as soon as I left my hometown club, it's going to be, I'm going to leave, I'm going to play for money, and I'm going to play for fun, and I want to score goals, I want to have more fights, and so that's why basically I dropped down a league, 2 leagues in fact, to play for Milton Keynes. But I had great fun because I had 2 years in the Super League where I didn't play a lot, so you have to play. You never know what's around the corner. Your career's short. My career was short in the end, but at that time it was like, I just wanted to go play and have fun. And I went to Coventry because Tomo was there, which was the GB coach at the time. They signed the likes of Tasker, Shuggy, Tommy Watkins, Knightsey, a lot of the Durham guys. So I thought, we've got a great team here, some great British lads. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have a successful year. Again, a new team in the Sky Dome. Again, I had a great year in Coventry. I had a medial ligament problem in my knee, and I broke my hand in a fight, which sidelined me for a little bit. But apart from that, I had a great year in Coventry. I really enjoyed it, and they really looked after us as well.
And while you're at Coventry, you were called up to play for the Great Britain national team. Tell me about that.
I wanted Tomo to see me on a daily basis in Coventry, as well as playing obviously on the same team as him, coaching week in, week out. That's what kind of gave me the edge, I think, of being selected. My first game was against Romania at Nottingham. Obviously one I'll never forget because Nottingham, my hometown, in the new arena. My first GB international, I ended up scoring 1 goal. Ironically, it was assisted by 2 old school friends, Ashley Tate and John Weaver. So it couldn't have been any better, really. I had my family and loads of friends in the crowd. Yeah, it was definitely a game I'll never forget. When you're a young kid, all you want to do is play for your country. I'm sure that's the same in most sports across the board. And when I was privileged and honoured to play for my, the national side. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be the biggest highlight in my career, especially scoring a goal in my hometown, as well, against Romania. It's definitely a highlight in my career.
Want more old-time hockey? Connect with Ken now on Twitter at OldTimeHockeyUK or on Facebook /OldTimeHockeyUK and visit OldTimeHockeyUK.com.
Let's talk about a subject that everyone in hockey has an opinion about. Let's talk about fighting.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of controversy over it, where some people say it shouldn't happen, other people say, like myself, that it's part of the game and, just let you guys get on with it. But what was your best fight?
Oh, there's been a couple, really. There was one when I was playing for Coventry. I fought Norman Pinnington of Slough. It started off at the home team bench, ended up at the away team bench. It carried on a bit in the penalty box. There was also, I would say, Milton Keynes. I had quite a few. Every time I fought in Milton Keynes, I mean, the first 7 games, I had 6 fights. And I remember getting called into the office on a Monday morning. Mark Mackey said, look, Smurf, we brought you here to score goals and be a leader and blah, blah, blah. And he said, we can't be paying you this kind of money to be sat in the penalty box every game and getting kicked out.
Yeah.
And I said to him, Mark, I've dropped down a couple of leagues. I've got to stamp my authority. And this came from basically a mentor, Paul Adey, at the time. Paul said, if anyone gives you any verbal, gives you a shot, give them a shot back. Don't take it. And if they want to fight them. He said, in the league, you've got to stamp your authority and just let everyone know that you're not going to be picked on, doesn't matter how big they are. So obviously when I left Nottingham and went to Milton Keynes, the first thing I did to the whole league to show them, look, I'm not afraid, I'll fight anybody. And I did. And it kind of made me a fan's favourite, really, in Milton Keynes because I had many fights and I ended up being top goal scorer as well in front of Paddy Scott, which Hot Shot Paddy Scott was a legend there. I won a few awards at the end of the season as well, which was fantastic. But yeah, it was fighting's part of the game. I think you've got to have it. A small percentage of the fans will pay £15, £17 a ticket just to watch a fight. Yeah. You've got to have tough guys. They're characters, they're entertainers.
Who was the toughest guy that you played against?
God, when I was, I would say, when obviously Panthers in the Super League and Sheffield in the Super League, some of the imports that was coming over then was like, you got your Troy Crowder, Phil Crow, Doug Dool, you had Mike McWilliam in Cardiff, you had Darren Banks in London, some real NHL heavyweights. Yeah. And I mean, you Google them and you put them on YouTube and see some of their fights. That's who I was playing against. It was, again, it could be quite intimidating when you're just a young guy. I was, Super League era, I was the age of 21. But these guys were legitimate fighters from the AHL. It was, all 6'4" plus. But yeah, I mean, them guys, they didn't pick on anyone like me. They had respect for me. They'd hit me and slash me, give me verbal, but they wouldn't fight me. They'd fight another tough guy. That's how it was back then. And they was proper tough guys.
Yeah.
They dropped the gloves and that was it. That's how it was. But some real big names back then was in the Super League.
Mark, I think we're coming almost to the end of, unfortunately, to the end of the podcast. What are you doing these days?
But I've gone from kind of another hobby and passion of mine. So I've gone from ice hockey being injured into fishing, into angling.
Oh, yeah.
I've always been fishing since I was a kid. Dad used to take me on the river, and I've basically got into writing for a magazine, Big Carp magazine. Our front cover last month. I do features every month for them.
Uh-huh.
I've got my own website now, which obviously I've got my own bait range, and I've got my own clothing range.
What's your website address?
I've got a team of 30. Website is www.puckersquirrelbaits.co.uk. So I look after the British Deaf Society. Do their socials, do their matches, and yeah, it's fantastic. I've got a great team. We have some great fun on socials. It's not all about just catching carp. It's about having fun and having a barbecue and a beer as well as, that's what it's all about, telling a few stories on the bank. But yeah, big time into angling now. I love travelling, all over the country, different lakes. I go to France 3-4 times a year if I can. But yeah, my passion now from a young kid in angling, I'm now turning into a living, so it's brilliant.
Right, so any listener out there that is an angler as well can hit your website.
Yeah, they can look at the website. I do private tuitions, and they can purchase the bait, clothing, whatever, and be part of the team if they're good enough. Yeah, it's all good.
Of course, you're on Facebook as well, because obviously we communicate every now and again on Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook under Marc Twaite, and obviously Twitter at Marc Twaite as well, so they can follow me on there.
It's been great, Mark. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, nice one, Ken.
Thanks for coming on, and I'll catch you later.
Yeah, cheers, mate.
Terrific. Thanks, Mark. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Old Time Hockey UK podcast. If you enjoyed the show, we would be thrilled if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review and rating. If you would like to receive updates on future episodes, please join our mailing list at www.oldtimehockeyuk.com. Old Time Hockey UK. The puck drops now.